The great hall of Morvanthus had never held so many wolves. Isolara pressed her spine against the cold marble of the western pillar, her heartbeat so loud she feared the wolves nearest her might hear it. Thousands of candles burned in the iron chandeliers above, their flickering light casting long shadows across the faces of pack leaders, nobles, and common wolves who had journeyed from every territory in Sorvathia to witness this sacred night. The choosing. She should not have come. Every instinct had screamed at her to stay hidden in the tiny chamber she had been given in the eastern wing, far from the ceremonies and celebrations that were never meant for someone like her. A healer of no bloodline, a woman with no house, no name, no claim to anything but the herbs she gathered and the wounds she mended. But Kaelin had not sent word in 4 days. 4 days of silence after 6 months of whispered promises. 6 months of secret meetings in the moonlit grove beyond the castle walls. 6 months of his hands cradling her face like she was something precious, his voice rough with emotion as he swore she was his fated mate. She had to see for herself. The Alpha King stood on the raised dais at the far end of the hall, his powerful frame draped in ceremonial black and gold. Even from this distance, Isolara could see the sharp angles of his jaw, the dark hair that fell across his brow, the broad shoulders that carried the weight of an entire kingdom. When he moved, lesser wolves lowered their eyes in instinctive submission. But Isolara knew another side of him. She knew the man who laughed quietly at her terrible jokes in the darkness of their grove. The man whose amber eyes softened to honey when he looked at her. The man who had pressed his mouth to the curve of her hip 3 moons ago and left his claiming mark there, a secret bite that bound them together in ways no ceremony could match. When the council's demands are satisfied, he had promised, his breath warm against her skin, I will declare you before the kingdom. You will be my queen, Isolara. My wolf has chosen. Nothing in this world can change that. She had believed every word. Her hand drifted to her lower belly, where a new secret grew. A secret she had discovered only days ago, when the morning sickness began, and her healing knowledge confirmed what her body already knew. She had planned to tell him tonight, after the ceremony, when he came to her, as he always did. Now she was not certain he would come at all. The candidates will approach, the High Elder announced, his ancient voice echoing through the hushed hall. Isolara's fingernails bit into her palms as 5 women in flowing white gowns ascended the steps to the dais. Daughters of the 5 most powerful bloodlines in Sorvathia, each one trained from birth for this moment. Each one beautiful. Each one worthy in ways Isolara could never be. And leading them, with hair like polished obsidian and eyes the color of a winter's storm, walked Valeth of House Duskhollow. The crowd murmured with approval. House Duskhollow controlled the northern mountains and commanded 4,000 warriors. They had been maneuvering their eldest daughter toward the throne for years. Isolara watched Kaelin's face, searching for any sign of the man she knew, any flicker of warmth, any glance toward the shadows where she hid, any acknowledgement that his true mate stood among the crowd with his child growing in her womb. His expression revealed nothing, and something cold began to spread through Isolara's chest. She possessed a gift she had never spoken of, not even to Kaelin. A sensitivity to the bonds between wolves, an ability to feel the threads of connection that linked mates and pack members together. It was how she had known, the very first time their eyes met, that he was meant for her. Now, as she reached toward that bond with trembling awareness, she felt something that made her blood turn to ice. The thread between them was still there, golden and strong. But Kaelin's end of it was wrapped in something dark. Something that muffled his presence like a hand pressed over a screaming mouth. Something was very, very wrong. Kaelin, Alpha King of Sorvathia, blood of the first wolves. The High Elder intoned, his voice carrying across the silent hall. You have consulted with your council. You have reviewed the alliances and treaties that will shape our kingdom's future. The realm awaits your choice. The silence stretched like a blade across Isolara's throat. She stopped breathing. Her mark burned beneath her dress, a pulse of heat that matched the frantic rhythm of her heart. Through their bond, she reached for him again, desperate to understand what she was sensing. The darkness wrapped around him was suffocating, impenetrable. His wolf, the wild presence she had come to know as well as her own heartbeat, was silent. Not absent. Silent. As if something had locked it away. Kalen stepped forward. His movement was wrong. Isolara saw it immediately, the stiffness in his gait, the mechanical precision that replaced his usual fluid grace. He moved like a puppet guided by invisible strings. "I choose," his voice rang out, hollow as an empty tomb, Valeth of House Dusk Hollow. The great hall erupted. Cheers and howls of celebration shook the ancient stones. Nobles embraced. Warriors stamped their feet in thunderous approval. The political alliance that would secure Sorvathia's northern border for generations had been achieved, and Isolara felt something inside her crack. But she did not cry. The wolves nearest her pillar began to notice. A young female with copper hair glanced at the pale woman in the shadows, then frowned and looked again. Others turned, sensing something unusual in their midst. The no-name healer stood motionless while the world celebrated around her. Her face was calm. Her eyes were dry. Her hands hung steady at her sides. She should have been weeping. Should have been destroyed. Any woman who had just watched her secret lover choose another would have crumbled. Instead, Isolara simply watched, because through that muffled, darkened bond, she could feel what no one else in the hall could sense. Kalen's wolf was not silent by choice. It was screaming, thrashing against invisible chains with desperate, savage fury, fighting to reach the surface, fighting to stop the words that came from his mouth. And beneath that struggle, bleeding through the darkness like light through cracked stone, she felt 3 words repeating over and over in anguished loops. Not her, not her, not her. Something had been done to him. Isolara did not understand what, did not know how, but she knew with absolute certainty that the man who had just spoken those words was not truly Kalen. On the dais, the Alpha King took Valeth's hand and raised it to his lips in the traditional gesture of acceptance. The Dusk Hollow woman smiled with triumph, her storm-gray eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Kalen's face showed nothing at all. The wolves around Isolara had stopped celebrating. They were staring at her now, unsettled by her unnatural stillness. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Who is that woman? Why does she not react? Something is wrong with her. They had no idea how right they were. Isolara turned from the dais without a sound. She walked through the parting crowd with her spine straight and her eyes forward, leaving a wake of confused silence behind her. The pack had expected tears. They had not expected her terrible, knowing calm. Isolara made it to her chamber before her composure shattered. The moment the door closed behind her, she doubled over with a gasp that tore from somewhere deep in her chest. Her hand flew to the mark on her hip, which burned now with searing intensity, as if his claiming bite was being ripped from her flesh. She had been strong in the hall because she knew the truth. But knowing did not stop the pain. Isolara sank to her knees on the cold stone floor, her body shaking with silent sobs. The bond between them pulsed with agony, his and hers tangled together until she could not tell where her heartbreak ended and his began. What had they done to him? She pressed her palm flat against her lower belly, where his child grew unaware of the catastrophe unfolding around it. A child conceived in love. A child whose father had just been forced to choose another woman while his wolf howled in torment. "I will find out what happened," she whispered to the life inside her. "I will not abandon him." But even as she spoke the words, cold reality crashed over her. She was no one. A healer with no house, no allies, no power. If she accused House Duskhollow of tampering with the Alpha King, she would be laughed out of the castle. Or worse, she would be silenced permanently. and Vailith was already moving to secure her position. By morning, the betrothal would be announced throughout the kingdom. By the next moon, they would be wed. If Isolara stayed, she would be forced to watch it all unfold. She rose on unsteady legs and began to pack with trembling hands. A few dresses, her grandmother's silver ring, the herbs she had gathered for the nausea that plagued her mornings. She paused at the window, looking out at the celebration bonfires being lit across the capital. Somewhere in that great hall, Kaelin was accepting congratulations for a choice he had not truly made. Vailith was probably already planning her coronation, and no one, not a single soul, knew that the Alpha King's wolf was trapped inside his own mind, screaming for a mate he could not reach. "I will come back for you," Isolara whispered, pressing her fingers to the cold glass. "When I understand what they did, when I find proof, I will come back." She pulled her worn traveling cloak around her shoulders and slipped through the servants' passage, disappearing into the winter night. She did not see the figure that emerged on the tower balcony moments after she vanished through the gate. She did not see the amber eyes that flickered, just for an instant, with desperate awareness before the darkness swallowed them again. And she did not hear the howl that split the sky, a sound so broken and raw that wolves across the city stopped their celebrations and lifted their heads in shared unease. By the time Kaelin's body carried him back to the great hall, moving on strings he could not cut, Isolara was already gone. And the war inside him had only just begun. 3 months had passed since the night Isolara disappeared. The village of Thornhaven sat nestled in a valley far to the south of Sorvathia's capital, surrounded by dense forests and forgotten by the politics of kings. It was the kind of place where travelers rarely ventured and questions were seldom asked. It was exactly what Isolara had needed. She had arrived in the dead of winter, half frozen and heavy with grief, claiming to be a young widow named Sarah, who sought refuge from painful memories. The village elders had taken pity on the pregnant woman with haunted eyes, offering her the abandoned cottage at the forest's edge in exchange for her healing skills. She had accepted without hesitation. Now spring had begun to thaw the frozen ground, and Isolara had become simply the healer woman who lived by the woods. She delivered babies. She set broken bones. She brewed remedies for fevers and dressed wounds that would not close. And every night, she lay awake with her hands pressed to her swelling belly, feeling the child move beneath her palms. "You are strong," she whispered in the darkness, feeling a kick against her ribs. "Strong like your father." The thought of Kaelin still sent pain lancing through her chest. 3 months, and the wound had not begun to heal. If anything, it had deepened, festering into something that kept her awake long after the village had fallen silent. The mark on her hip had never stopped burning. Isolara had examined it countless times, watching in confusion as the scar tissue darkened rather than faded. When a wolf rejected their mate, the claiming mark was supposed to disappear within weeks. The bond would sever cleanly, leaving only smooth skin and bitter memories behind. Instead, hers pulsed with heat that intensified each passing day. It ached when the wind blew from the north. And sometimes, late at night, she could swear she felt something through it. A presence, a searching, a desperate, clawing need that was not her own. She had not imagined those final moments. His wolf, screaming behind invisible walls, the darkness wrapped around his mind like chains, the 3 words bleeding through, "Not her, not her, not her." Whatever had been done to him, it had not broken their bond, which meant Kaelin was still fighting. Isolara pushed back the covers and moved to the window, looking out at the moonlit forest. The village slept peacefully around her, unaware of the secrets she carried. A shadow moved between the trees. Isolara's breath caught. She pressed closer to the glass, her eyes straining against the darkness. Nothing. Only the wind stirring the branches. But as she turned back to her bed, the mark on her hip flared with sudden, searing heat. Someone was watching. The news came 3 days later. Isolara was grinding feverfew in her small kitchen when young Pella, the baker's daughter, burst through her door without knocking. The girl's face was flushed with excitement, her braids flying loose from their ribbons. "Mistress Sarah, traders have come from the north." Isolara's hand stilled on the mortar. "Traders?" "From the capital itself. They carry news of the king." The pestle slipped from Isolara's fingers, clattering against the wooden table. She forced her expression to remain neutral, though her heart had begun to pound. "What news?" Pella bounced on her heels, delighted to be the bearer of such exciting gossip. "They say the Alpha King has gone mad. He roams the kingdom like a wild beast, searching for someone. A woman. No one knows who she is or what she did, only that he will destroy anything that stands between him and finding her." Ice spread through Isolara's veins. "They say the crops have begun to wither in the eastern territories." Pella continued breathlessly. "The pack bonds are fraying. Wolves have grown aggressive, attacking livestock even in daylight. The king's own guard has been sent to every corner of the realm, questioning villagers, searching every house and cottage." Isolara gripped the edge of her table. "Searching for what?" "For her. The mystery woman." Pella's eyes were wide with morbid fascination. "The traders say he has offered 20,000 gold pieces for any information about her whereabouts." 20,000. Can you imagine? 20,000 gold. A fortune that could feed Thornhaven for a decade. "And the queen?" Isolara heard herself ask. "Lady Valith?" Pella's excitement dimmed slightly. "They say she remains at the castle, but the king has not been seen in her presence since the night of the choosing. Some whisper that he refuses to even speak her name." The girl leaned closer, dropping her voice to a scandalized whisper. "They say the mating ceremony has been postponed indefinitely, that the king will not touch her." Isolara's mark flared with heat so intense she nearly gasped. He was searching for her. He had not touched Valith. The bond was pulling him toward her even now. "Thank you for telling me," Isolara managed, her voice remarkably steady. "You should return to your father's shop. I have work to complete." But after Pella had gone, Isolara sank into her chair with trembling legs. For 3 months, she had believed she was buying time, gathering strength, waiting for the moment when she could return to Sorvathia with proof of what had been done. Instead, Kalen was tearing his kingdom apart to find her. And if the traders knew about the search, then House Duskhollow knew as well. They would understand that their hold on the throne was slipping, that whatever they had done to control Kalen was failing, which meant they would be looking for her too, not to bring her back, to ensure she never returned at all. Movement at her window caught her eye. A wolf stood at the edge of the tree line. Massive, dark-furred. Its amber eyes fixed on her cottage with an intelligence that was anything but animal. Then another emerged beside it. Then 3 more. The mark on her hip exploded with fire. And Isolara understood with terrible clarity that time had just run out. The knock at her door was almost polite. Isolara stood frozen in her kitchen, watching the 5 wolves hold their positions at the tree line. They made no move to approach. No aggressive posture. They simply waited, their amber eyes gleaming in the afternoon light. The knock came again, firmer this time. Whoever stood on her threshold was in human form. The wolves outside were merely an escort, or a warning. Isolara's hand found the iron poker beside her hearth. It was a pitiful weapon against trained wolves, but it was better than nothing. She opened the door. 3 figures stood before her cottage. 2 were clearly warriors, their massive frames and watchful stances marking them as the Alpha King's elite guard. But it was the 3rd man who drew her attention. He was older than the others, perhaps 50 winters, with silver threading through his dark hair and deep lines carved around his eyes. Those eyes, a warm brown rather than amber, studied her with an expression that seemed almost relieved. "My lady," he said, and the title made her flinch. "I am Draven, first beta to the Alpha King. We have been searching for you for a very long time." Isolara tightened her grip on the poker. You have made a mistake. My name is Sarah. I am a simple healer. You are Isolara, daughter of no house, formerly a healer in the royal castle. Draven's voice was gentle but certain. You bear the king's claiming mark on your left hip and his child in your womb. And you disappeared on the night of the choosing without a single word of explanation. Her knuckles whitened around the iron. How do you know about the mark? Because the king described it to me in detail the morning he broke free. Draven paused, letting the words land. Because he has spent every moment since that morning hunting for you. Because watching him suffer these 3 months has been the hardest thing I have endured in 30 years of service. Broke free? Isolara's voice cracked. Broke free from what? Draven glanced at the warriors beside him, then back at her. May we come in? What I have to tell you should not be spoken where others might hear. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, but Draven's eyes held no threat, only exhaustion and something that looked almost like hope. She stepped aside. Draven entered alone, gesturing for the guards to remain outside. He looked around her modest cottage, taking in the drying herbs, the simple furniture, the narrow bed where she had spent countless nights reaching through the bond for a man who could not answer. He did not choose Valeth, Draven said quietly. The choice was never his to make. Isolara's legs threatened to buckle. Tell me. The night of the choosing, someone slipped a compound into his wine, a mixture derived from moonsbane and other herbs we have not yet fully identified. It severed his connection to his wolf. Locked his true self away behind walls he could not break through. I felt it, Isolara whispered. Through the bond, his wolf was screaming. Draven's eyes widened. You felt that? Even through the suppression? I have a gift. I can sense bonds between wolves. That night, I felt the darkness wrapped around him. I felt his wolf fighting to reach the surface. Her voice broke. I knew something was wrong. That is why I did not cry. Understanding dawned across Draven's weathered face. The pack spoke of your composure. How you stood like stone while others expected you to shatter. They thought you were cold, unfeeling. I was terrified, but I knew the man who spoke those words was not truly Kaelin. You were right. Draven reached into his coat and withdrew a folded letter. The effects of the compound wore off after 3 days. The king woke screaming your name. He remembered nothing of the ceremony. Nothing of choosing Valeth. The first thing he did was run to your chamber. Isolara pressed her hand to her mouth. When he found it empty, when he realized you had fled, Draven shook his head. I have served 3 Alpha Kings, my lady. I have witnessed wars and betrayals and unspeakable loss. But I have never seen a wolf come so close to destroying himself as Kaelin did that morning. Tears burned in Isolara's eyes. All those nights she had spent wondering if she had imagined the bond between them. All those moments of doubt, of grief, of lonely desperation. He had been searching for her. From the very first moment he understood what had happened. Who did this? She demanded. House Duskhollow. Draven's expression hardened. We cannot yet prove it, but we know. Valeth's family has sought the throne for 3 generations. With you gone and the king bound to their daughter by witnessed oath, they believed their victory was complete. He pressed the letter into her hands. Isolara unfolded it with numb fingers. The seal was broken, but she could see the Duskhollow crest pressed into the dark wax. The message inside was brief. The nameless healer has been located. The problem will be eliminated before the new moon rises. House Duskhollow protects its own. Her stomach dropped. Assassins, she breathed. We intercepted this message by chance, Draven said grimly. We do not know how many have been sent or how close they are. My lady, Kaelin is coming for you himself. The bond has been pulling him south for days. But I fear the assassins may reach you first. As if to answer his words, a howl split the evening air. Not from the wolves at the tree line, from the forest beyond. Close, and hunting. Draven was on his feet instantly, his body coiling with tension. They are here. Through her window, Isolara saw the 5 escort wolves turn toward the sound, their hackles rising. More shapes were emerging from the trees, dark-furred, moving with predatory coordination. Not Kaelin's wolves. Dusk hollows. And leading them, stepping from the shadows with a crossbow already raised, was a figure in black leather whose face was hidden behind a wolf skull mask. The assassins had found her first. The first arrow shattered Isolara's window before she could draw breath to scream. Draven moved with supernatural speed, shoving her toward the back of the cottage as glass exploded across the floor. The 2 guards burst through the front door, already shifting mid-stride, their human forms dissolving into massive wolves that lunged toward the tree line. "The root cellar," Draven commanded, his eyes flickering amber as his wolf rose to the surface. "There is a hidden door beneath the pantry. Go now." "There is no escape from the cellar," Isolara gasped. "You only need to survive until the king arrives. He is close. I can feel him through the pack bond." Draven pressed a silver-edged dagger into her hands. "Use this if you must. Do not hesitate." Another arrow punched through the cottage wall, embedding itself inches from Isolara's head. Dark liquid glistened on its tip. Poison. "They are not trying to capture me," she realized. "They want me dead before Kaelin can reach me." The Dusk Hollow family cannot afford witnesses to their treachery. Draven's body had begun to shift, bones cracking and reforming beneath his skin. "Hide, my lady. Whatever happens, do not emerge until you hear the king's voice." Then he was gone, a massive gray wolf crashing through the ruined window to join the battle outside. Isolara stood frozen in her destroyed home, the silver dagger clutched in trembling fingers. Through the shattered glass, she could see chaos erupting in the twilight. Wolves clashing with wolves, the flash of steel, the sickening sounds of combat. Her mark burned with renewed intensity, and she gasped at the sensation that flooded through it. He was closer now. Much closer. The bond between them pulsed with emotions that were not her own. Rage, vast and consuming. Fear, sharp and unfamiliar. And beneath it all, a desperate need that made her chest ache with its intensity. Kaelin was coming for her. But he would not arrive in time. Through the window, she watched Draven's wolf form slam against a tree with bone-cracking force. He struggled to rise, blood matting his silver-gray fur, but 3 dark wolves circled him with predatory patience. He was losing. The guards were already down, their bodies motionless on the blood-soaked ground. And the masked figure was walking toward her cottage with deliberate steps, a second crossbow bolt already loaded. Isolara looked at the cellar door. She could hide, could wait in the darkness and pray that Kaelin arrived before the assassins found her. But Draven would be dead by then, and she would be cowering underground while wolves died to protect her and her child. No, she had spent 3 months hiding, 3 months letting fear dictate her choices. Not anymore. Isolara dropped the silver dagger and pressed her palms together. The gift she had kept hidden her entire life stirred in her chest. Not just the ability to sense bonds, but the power that had always lurked beneath it. The power her grandmother had warned her never to reveal. The power that marked her as something more than a simple healer. Golden light bloomed between her hands. Isolara stepped through the shattered window into the chaos of battle. The effect was immediate. Every wolf in the clearing turned toward the pregnant woman who blazed like a fallen star. The Dusk Hollow assassins hesitated, their coordinated attack faltering as instinct warred with training. Isolara walked toward Draven's fallen form, her bare feet leaving prints of light in the blood-stained grass. "You will not have him," she said, and her voice carried harmonics that resonated with ancient power. "You will not have any of them." She knelt beside the wounded Beta and pressed her glowing hands to his torn flesh. Draven gasped as healing energy poured into his body, knitting bone and closing gashes with impossible speed. One of the Dusk Hollow wolves lunged toward her, jaws wide. The golden light around her flared like the sun breaking through storm clouds. The wolf was hurled backward with a yelp of agony, its dark fur smoking where the light had touched it. It scrambled to its feet and fled into the forest, followed by two of its packmates. But not all of them ran. The masked figure stopped 10 paces away, crossbow raised and aimed directly at Isolara's chest. Impressive. A female voice, cold and amused, emerged from behind the wolf skull mask. The Dusk Hollow family will be fascinated to learn that the king's nameless whore is a witch. Isolara's power flickered. The healing she had poured into Draven had cost her more than she realized, and the child in her womb was drawing heavily on her remaining strength. The assassin's finger tightened on the trigger. "Lady Vaelith sends her regards," the woman said. The crossbow sang, and the world exploded. The bolt never reached her. A shape massive as a nightmare burst from the tree line, crossing the distance in a single impossible bound. Black fur swallowed the fading light. Golden eyes blazed with fury that seemed to set the very air on fire. Jaws closed around the crossbow bolt mid-flight, shattering it to splinters. The assassin had time for a single scream before the great black wolf was upon her. Isolara heard the crunch of bone, saw the masked figure thrown aside like a discarded doll, and watched the remaining Dusk Hollow wolves scatter in pure primal terror. Then those burning golden eyes turned to her. Isolara could not move, could not breathe, could only stare at the creature that radiated power like heat from a wildfire. The wolf approached her slowly, each step deliberate and careful. Blood dripped from its muzzle. Its massive body blocked out the rising moon. Then it lowered its great head and pressed its nose gently to her swollen belly. The baby kicked. Hard. As if recognizing the presence that had been absent for 3 long months. The wolf made a sound that broke Isolara's heart. A whimper. From the most powerful creature in the kingdom. "Kaelin," she whispered. The shift happened between one heartbeat and the next. One moment, a wolf stood before her. The next, a man knelt in the blood-soaked grass, his hands hovering over her stomach as if terrified to touch her. He looked up, and Isolara saw that the Alpha King was weeping. "You are alive," Kaelin breathed. His voice was raw, shattered, as if he had been screaming for months. "You are alive, and you are—" His eyes dropped to her belly. His hand reached toward it, trembling, then stopped. "May I?" he asked. The question shattered her. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in all the territories, was asking permission to touch his own child. Isolara took his hand and pressed it to her stomach. The baby kicked immediately, pushing against his palm as if trying to reach him. Kaelin's breath caught, his eyes widening with wonder and grief intertwined. "Our child," he whispered. "You were carrying our child, and I did not know. You disappeared with our child, and I thought I had lost everything. You chose another." The words came out sharper than Isolara intended. "I stood in that hall and watched you take her hand. I did not choose her." Kaelin's eyes blazed with sudden intensity. "I would never—" "I know." The words stopped him cold. "I know," Isolara repeated, softer now. "I felt it through the bond. Your wolf, trapped behind walls it could not break, screaming while your mouth spoke words that were not yours." Kaelin stared at her. "You knew? That night, you knew something was wrong?" "That is why I did not cry. The pack expected me to shatter, but I could feel you fighting. I could feel you trying to reach me even as your body chose someone else." "Then why did you run?" The anguish in his voice cut her to the bone. "If you knew I was not myself, why did you disappear?" Isolara's composure finally cracked. "Because I did not understand what had been done. Because I thought if I stayed, they would find a way to silence me permanently. Because I was pregnant and terrified and I had no proof, no allies, no power to fight against an entire noble house." Tears spilled down her cheeks now, all the grief of 3 months finally breaking free. "I was trying to protect our child," she choked out. I was trying to survive long enough to find a way back to you. Kaelin moved then, pulling her into his arms with desperate gentleness. He held her as if she might dissolve like mist if he gripped too tightly. His face buried in her hair, his body shaking against hers. 3 months, he whispered. 3 months of not knowing. My wolf nearly destroyed us both trying to find you. I am sorry. Isolara clutched at his shirt. I am so sorry. Do not apologize. Kaelin pulled back to cup her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. You did what you had to do. You protected our child when I could not. You are the bravest woman I have ever known. I do not feel brave. I feel like I have been breaking apart for 3 months. Then let me hold you together. He pressed his forehead to hers. Let me spend the rest of my life making this right. The bond between them surged with warmth, golden and strong. The darkness that had wrapped around him finally, completely gone. Isolara felt his emotions flood through her. Love, overwhelming and absolute. Relief so profound it brought fresh tears to her eyes. I love you, Kaelin said. I have loved you since the moment we met. I loved you when that poison stole my will. I loved you through 3 months of madness and desperation. And I will love you until my heart stops beating and beyond. Isolara answered him with a kiss. It was not gentle. 3 months of separation, of grief, of desperate longing poured into the space between their lips. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers clutched at his shoulders. The bond roared to life, 2 broken halves finally becoming whole. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kaelin's eyes had shifted to molten gold. The Dusk Hollow family will answer for what they have done, he promised. They will learn what happens when you threaten my mate. A howl rose from the forest, long and urgent. Draven, now back in human form and clutching his partially healed side, limped toward them. My king, the beta said. Our scouts report movement from the north. Dusk Hollow forces are marching toward the capital. It seems they anticipated your absence and decided to make their final move. Kaelin's expression hardened to steel. Then we return to Sorvathia tonight, he said. And we end this. They rode through the darkness, Isolara cradled against Kaelin's chest on his great black warhorse. She had protested at first, arguing that she was perfectly capable of riding on her own. Kaelin had simply lifted her onto his saddle and silenced her objections with a look that brooked no argument. My wolf needs you close, he had murmured against her ear. 3 months of separation nearly drove us both to madness. I will not let you out of my reach until every threat is eliminated. So Isolara had relented, leaning back against his warmth as the kingdom blurred past them in the moonlight. As they rode, Kaelin told her everything. He told her about waking from the poisoned haze to find Valeth in his chambers, attempting to complete a mating ceremony he had no memory of agreeing to. About the horror that had crashed through him when he realized what had been done. About throwing Valeth from his rooms with enough force to crack the chamber door. He told her about the search that had consumed every moment since, the wolves sent to every territory in the realm, the sleepless nights spent poring over maps and reports, the way his control had shattered piece by piece until his own council feared to be in the same room with him. My wolf knew you were alive, he said against her hair. The bond never fully severed. Every time I tried to accept that you might be gone forever, I would feel a pulse of warmth. And I knew you were out there. Isolara's hand covered his where it rested on her belly. I felt you too. The mark that would not fade, the heat that kept me awake at night. We were always connected, Isolara. Nothing could truly break what we share. Dawn was painting the sky in shades of amber and rose when they crested the final hill. The capital of Sorvathia spread before them, its ancient towers reaching toward the heavens. And something was terribly wrong. Smoke rose from a dozen points throughout the city. The distant clash of steel echoed across the valley. And flying above the castle gates, where the royal banner should have billowed in the morning breeze, hung the black and silver standard of House Dusk Hollow. No. Draven breathed. pulling his horse alongside theirs. They moved faster than we anticipated. Kalen's arm tightened around Isolara as a growl built in his chest. They have taken my castle. A rider broke from the city gates, galloping toward them at reckless speed. One of Kalen's scouts, her face ashen with exhaustion and fear. My king, she gasped, pulling her horse to a halt. House Duskhollow attacked at dawn. They had allies within the guard. Lord Duskhollow has declared you unfit to rule and named himself regent. Lady Violet has been crowned queen. A snarl ripped from Kalen's throat. There is more. They have taken hostages. Servants and guards who remained loyal to you. They are to be executed at midday as traitors to the crown. 43 of them. Isolara felt the blood drain from her face. Including the old healer woman who worked in the eastern wing, the scout continued, the one called Marin. The name struck Isolara like a physical blow. Marin, the elderly healer who had taken Isolara under her wing when she first arrived at the castle, who had taught her which herbs worked best for which ailments, who had suspected the truth about her relationship with Kalen and never breathed a word. We have to save them, Isolara said fiercely. Kalen looked down at her. Isolara, you cannot enter that city if the Duskhollow forces capture you. If we do nothing, 43 innocent people die. I will not have their blood on my hands, Kalen, and I will not let Marin die because she showed kindness to me. For a long moment, the Alpha King was silent. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. Something fierce, something proud. My queen, he murmured. Even now, facing your own death, you think of others before yourself. He turned to address the army of wolves assembled behind them. The Duskhollow family believes they have won, Kalen announced. They believe their treachery has succeeded, that their false queen sits secure upon a stolen throne. His eyes blazed with golden fire. They are wrong. Today, we take back what is ours. Today, we show the traitors what happens to those who poison their king, threaten their true queen, and murder innocents in pursuit of power. The wolves howled as one, a chorus of fury and loyalty that shook the very ground. For Sorvathia, Kalen roared. For justice. For my mate and the heir she carries. The army surged forward, and at its head, with the woman he loved held close against his heart, the Alpha King rode to reclaim his throne. The battle for Sorvathia was swift and savage. The Duskhollow forces had expected resistance. They had not expected an army of wolves driven by 3 months of rage and the primal imperative to protect their king's true mate. Isolara watched from a protected position on the hillside as Kalen led the assault. Even from this distance, she could feel his fury through the bond, a blazing inferno that scorched through her veins. His wolf form was death incarnate, a shadow of black fur and golden eyes that tore through the enemy lines. Within 2 hours, the outer walls had fallen. Within 3, the castle gates lay in splinters. But as the sun climbed toward its peak, a messenger came sprinting with news that made Isolara's blood freeze. My lady, Lord Duskhollow has barricaded himself in the great hall with the hostages. He says if the king does not surrender, he will execute them all, starting with the old healer woman. Isolara was moving before she consciously decided to. She ignored the protests of the guards Kalen had left to protect her. Ignored the ache in her back and the weight of the child pressing against her spine. None of it mattered. She had to reach the Great Hall. She found Kalen at the doors of the Great Hall, held back by Draven and 4 other wolves. You cannot go in there, Draven was saying. It is exactly what Duskhollow wants. If I do nothing, innocent people die, Kalen snarled. Kalen! He spun at the sound of her voice. Isolara, what are you doing here? I told you to stay. I know what you told me. She stopped before him, meeting his desperate gaze without flinching. And I am telling you that I will not hide while others suffer in my place. This is not your fight. It became my fight the moment House Duskhollow decided I was an obstacle to their ambitions. Isolara placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her palm. And it became my fight the moment I fell in love with you. Kaelin's breath caught. I love you, Isolara repeated, stronger now. I loved you when I thought you had betrayed me. I loved you through 3 months of exile, and I will not let that love make me a coward. She stepped past him before he could respond. Lord Duskhollow, she called out, her voice echoing through the corridor. I am Isolara, the woman your family has tried so hard to destroy. I am coming in. Alone. Isolara, no. Kaelin grabbed her arm. She turned to look at him. You trusted me once to know when something was wrong. Trust me now to know that this is right. Something passed between them through the bond. Not words, but understanding. Faith. And beneath it all, a love so vast it could not be contained by fear. Kaelin released her arm. Isolara pushed open the doors and stepped into the great hall. The scene before her was worse than she had imagined. 43 hostages knelt in a row before the raised dais, hands bound, faces pale with terror. Armed Duskhollow soldiers stood behind them, blades pressed to throats. And on the throne that belonged to Kaelin sat Lord Aldrich Duskhollow, his silver hair gleaming like a crown of ice. Beside him, draped in stolen finery, stood Vailith. So the nameless healer finally shows herself. Vailith's lip curled with disdain as she studied Isolara's swollen belly. I wondered what made you so special. Now I see you are nothing but a common breeder who spread her legs for a crown. Isolara ignored her. Her eyes found Marin among the hostages. The old healer's face was bloodied, one eye swollen shut, but her voice was firm. Run, child. Do not let them take you too. I am done running. Isolara turned to face Lord Duskhollow. You want the king to surrender. I am offering you something better. Duskhollow's eyebrow rose. And what might that be? Me. She placed her hand on her belly. The king's true mate and his unborn heir. Take me as your hostage instead. Release the others. No. The roar came from beyond the doors, Kaelin's anguish tearing through the bond like shattered glass. But Duskhollow was already smiling. An interesting proposition. Guards, release the prisoners, secure the woman. The hostages were cut free, stumbling toward the doors in confused relief. Marin tried to reach Isolara, but soldiers pushed her back with the others. As rough hands grabbed Isolara's arms, she felt strangely calm. The bond with Kaelin pulsed with his panic, his rage, his desperate need to reach her. But beneath all of that, she could feel something else. The child stirring within her. And with it, a power she had never felt before. Her gift had always been sensing bonds, but the child she carried was the product of a true mate bond, something that had not occurred in the royal bloodline for 7 generations. And that child, even unborn, possessed magic of its own. Golden light began to emanate from Isolara's belly. Duskhollow's eyes widened. What trickery is this? The light spread, flowing through her veins, filling her chest. But unlike the healing magic she had used before, this was different. Wilder, more ancient. This was the power of the wolf. Pain exploded through her body as her bones began to shift. No, Isolara gasped, falling to her knees. Not now. Not yet. But the transformation would not be denied. The child's awakening power had triggered what she had unknowingly been suppressing since the moment Kaelin had claimed her. The wolf that had been sleeping in her blood, waiting for the right moment to emerge. She was shifting. And she was doing it surrounded by enemies who wanted her dead. The great hall doors exploded inward. Kaelin burst through in full wolf form, his massive black body hurtling toward her even as her own body tore itself apart. His howl shook the rafters, a sound of pure anguish and protective fury. Duskhollow soldiers rushed to intercept him. Vailith screamed orders. Chaos erupted on every side. And Isolara, caught in the agony of transformation, could only pray she survived long enough to meet her mate on the other side. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Every bone in her body shattered and reformed. Every muscle tore and rebuilt itself. Her skin rippled as fur pushed through from beneath. Through the haze of agony, she saw Kalen fighting his way toward her. But Dusk Hollow soldiers kept coming, wave after wave, slowing his advance. And Lord Dusk Hollow had drawn a sword, a blade that gleamed with an unnatural silver sheen, wolfsbane steel. "If I cannot have the throne," Dusk Hollow snarled, advancing toward her convulsing form, "then neither will he." The sword descended. Isolara's hand shot up. Not a human hand. A paw, covered in fur the color of moonlit snow, tipped with claws that gleamed like silver. She caught the blade. The wolfsbane burned against her paw, but she did not let go. Her claws tightened, and with a wrench of her foreleg she ripped the sword from Dusk Hollow's grasp and sent it clattering across the stones. "Impossible," he breathed. The transformation completed in a surge of golden light. Where a pregnant woman had knelt, a wolf now stood. Her fur was pure white, her eyes blazing with amber fire. She was smaller than Kalen's massive form, but no less magnificent. And she was furious. Isolara lunged, her jaws closed around Dusk Hollow's throat with savage precision. She lifted him from the ground, shook him once, twice, and then flung him aside like refuse. Kalen reached her side, his black fur pressing against her white. Through the bond, she felt his overwhelming relief, his awe, and his fierce pride. "You shifted." His voice echoed in her mind. "Isolara, you shifted while carrying our child." "Our child gave me the strength," she replied. "Our child saved us both." Valeth had retrieved a fallen blade. She advanced toward them, her face twisted with hatred. "You have ruined everything," Valeth hissed. "You were supposed to be nobody." Isolara shifted back to human form. She stood before her enemy, one hand resting protectively on her belly. "I destroyed nothing," Isolara said quietly. "Your family's legacy was built on poison and treachery. All I did was survive long enough for the truth to emerge." Valeth screamed and charged with the sword raised. Kalen's jaws closed around her wrist before she took 3 steps. He shifted back to human, pinning the struggling woman to the ground while his wolves flooded the hall to secure the remaining Dusk Hollow forces. "Valeth of House Dusk Hollow," Kalen announced, "you and your family are charged with treason, attempted murder of the true queen, and conspiracy against the crown." "You cannot do this," Valeth spat. "You chose me. Before the entire kingdom, you chose me." "I chose nothing." Kalen's eyes blazed gold. "A man poisoned into compliance is not a king making choices. The ceremony was a violation, not a vow, and it ends today." Guards dragged the Dusk Hollow family away as cloaks were brought to cover Kalen and Isolara both. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly, wrapping the fabric around her shoulders. Isolara paused, taking inventory. Her body felt different now, stronger, more alive. "I am well," she said. "Better than well." Kalen's hand found her belly. "The child?" "Children," Isolara corrected softly. "I think there may be 2 of them. The transformation did not harm them. If anything, it strengthened them." Kalen made a choked sound and pulled her into his arms. "I thought I had lost you," he whispered. "When Dusk Hollow raised that sword—" "I know." Isolara pulled back to cup his face in her hands. "But I am here. I am not going anywhere. Not ever again." "The bond," Kalen said hoarsely. "It needs to be completed. Properly. Witnessed. If you will have me." "I will have you," she said. "I have been yours since the moment we met, Kalen. Nothing will ever change that." The completion ceremony took place 3 days later, beneath the full moon in the sacred grove where they had first discovered their bond. Every wolf in Servathia had gathered to witness their king claim his true queen. The great hall could not have contained them all, so they stood among the ancient trees instead, their eyes gleaming in the silver light. Isolara wore white, a flowing gown that accommodated her growing belly. Kaelin wore black and gold, the colors of his house, the colors she would now share. The High Elder who had presided over the false choosing now stood before them with tears in his ancient eyes. "What was broken by treachery, let it be healed by truth," he intoned. "What was stolen by poison, let it be reclaimed by love. Kaelin, Alpha King of Sorvathia, do you accept this woman as your true mate, your queen, the mother of your heirs?" "I accept her," Kaelin said, his voice ringing through the grove. "In this life, and every life that follows." "Isolara, healer of no house, do you accept this man as your true mate, your king, the father of your children?" Isolara smiled. "I accept him, with all that I am, and all that I will ever be." "Then let the bond be sealed." Kaelin tilted his head, baring his throat in the ancient gesture of trust. Isolara understood instinctively what to do. Her wolf rose within her, guiding her movements as she pressed her lips to the spot where his pulse beat strongest. Her teeth sank into his flesh. The bond exploded between them. It was not pain, it was completion. Two halves of a single soul finally, fully joined. Isolara felt his essence pour into her as hers flowed into him. Every memory, every emotion, every secret corner of their hearts laid bare to each other. She saw the night of the choosing through his eyes, not the empty puppet she had witnessed, but the horror of waking 3 days later with no memory of what he had done. She felt his terror when he found her chamber empty, felt the madness that had clawed at his mind during 3 months of desperate searching, and he saw himself through her eyes. The man who had made her believe in love again, the father of her children, the king who had torn his kingdom apart to find her. When Isolara finally released him, they were both trembling. "My queen," Kaelin breathed. "My king," she answered. Around them, the wolves of Sorvathia lifted their voices in a howl of celebration, a sound of joy, of justice, of a true mate bond finally, completely sealed. In the weeks that followed, the Dusk Hollow family faced judgment. Lord Aldrich was executed for his crimes, his final moments spent begging for mercy he had never shown to others. Valeth was exiled to the barren reaches beyond the eastern mountains, stripped of her name and her wolf, condemned to live out her days as the nobody she had once accused Isolara of being. The kingdom healed slowly but surely. The crops that had withered under the weight of their alpha's suffering began to flourish. The wolves who had grown feral returned to their senses as the completed bond radiated stability throughout the realm. And on a warm summer evening, as the sun set over Sorvathia in shades of gold and crimson, Isolara gave birth to twins, a boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's healing gift. A girl with fur white as snow when she shifted and eyes that already gleamed with amber fire. Kaelin held his children with tears streaming down his face, his massive warrior's hands impossibly gentle. "Thank you," he whispered to Isolara, who lay exhausted but radiant in their bed. "For believing when I could not. For fighting when I was lost. For carrying them safely when I could not protect you." Isolara reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the claiming mark on his throat. The mark that matched the one on her hip, both now healed into beautiful silver scars that proclaimed their bond to all who saw them. "I never stopped believing," she said softly. "Even in the darkest moments, something inside me knew. We were always meant to find our way back to each other." Kaelin leaned down to kiss her, their children nestled safely between them. "Always," he agreed. "In this life, and every life that follows. You are my heart, Isolara, my mate, my home." Outside their window, the wolves of Sorvathia lifted their voices in celebration. And in the great tapestry of the kingdom's history, a new chapter was woven. The story of a healer who became a queen, of a king who tore apart his realm to find his true love, of a bond that could not be broken by poison or politics or even the cruelest twists of fate. They had found each other against all odds, and they would never be parted again.